Writing attention-grabbing lyrics is as easy as building this stool, because your lyrics need only 4 strong legs to stand on their own. But most songwriters barely manage to screw in 2 legs and want to write their lyrics fall flat. So if you ever struggle with writing lyrics and always battle with writer's block, then this video is for you. What's up, my name is Max and I help musicians make lyrics the easiest part of songwriting, teaching them the techniques of hundreds of hit songs. So in the next 20 minutes I'm gonna walk you through the 4 areas of lyric writing. And along the way I teach you 18 lessons I wish I learned earlier. Lessons that help my students finish their lyrics for all their songs, stop them from wasting their time and avoiding writer's block altogether. So make sure you stick to the very end, because with each lesson they get more and more important. But let's jump right in and talk about the first leg of lyric writing, conveying emotion. Because this is all about making listeners feel what you feel. And lesson 1 is use your senses. I struggled for years to express how I'm feeling in my songs. Lines like I'm so sad or I love you so much were the only ones that made it to the page. But statements like this won't convey emotion, because the listener lacks the context to understand how sad or in love you are. But there's an easy trick to fix this. Simply write down what your senses can pick up. This creates images that capture the exact moment emotions hit you, which gives the listener context to build a connection with your song. And this is a technique every hit songwriter never skips. Just look at the songs of Ed Sheeran, Eminem or Charli XCX. But this is only the first step to turn your emotions into words. In the next lesson we'll make sure they have impact. Because lesson 2 is dial up your emotion to 200%. Have you ever compared your lyrics to the songwriters you love? How was that for you? For me this was always a giant letdown. Compared to all these songwriters, my lyrics felt emotionless. But this changed once I understood this. When we write songs we only have few minutes to transfer what we feel to the listener. So we cannot waste time talking around stuff. We need to be straightforward and often go over the top to drive the point home. This means we cannot write lines like I am angry. We need to paint a hard-hitting picture. A picture like jumping into a bulldozer and crushing everything that reminds us of our broken relationship. This is what it takes to let the audience feel what we feel. So for your next song, go over your lyrics and find all these emotionless statements. Then transform them into expressive images. And once you capture strong emotions, you can level them up with lesson 3, use metaphors. Most of you know that metaphors are important for great lyrics. But what most don't know is why they're important. And that's a huge problem. In the past I struggled with this. All the metaphors I came up with felt cliché or lacked meaning, because I never understood what their purpose is. Because metaphors take abstract and vague emotions and make them tangible. They give context to the listener as something to hold onto. This means you can use a metaphor to describe your sadness and make it physical. So for example, your goodbye hit me like a tsunami. The waves washed away my memories. Now this abstract emotion became a lot more meaningful. It paints a picture and shows how hard this sadness really hits. No wonder almost every hit songwriter uses this technique. So as a rule of thumb, include at least 1 metaphor per song. Now you know how to package emotions and make them felt. But all these metaphors are meaningless if your lyrics aren't authentic. So this is where the next lesson comes in. Lesson 4. Authentic lyrics need vulnerability. Have you ever listened to a song, read their lyrics and thought, oh this sounds cool, but I feel nothing? That's a struggle that most songwriters face. And the main reason is their lyrics don't connect. Because they don't share a meaningful story. They don't open up themselves. So they write lyrics that can mean anything, but this robs your songs from the ability to build a connection with your listeners. The number 1 reason of this is a lack of confidence. You might not feel confident enough to share your struggles or flaws, but I encourage you to open yourself up. The most meaningful songs share real and deep emotions, because that's what songs are about. They capture emotion and transfer it to the listener. Just listen to all the songs that impacted you. You will always find a vulnerable message. So for your next song, share something you have trouble talking about. By the way, I learned all these lessons by analyzing the lyrics of hundreds of hit songs. And I put all my knowledge into this free lyric checklist. So if you want to get your hands on this and dive deeper into these topics, then stick to the very end. With 4 lessons down, you unlock the ability to capture powerful emotions in your lyrics. Now it's time to make them the most interesting version they can be, because the most emotional lyrics will fall flat if they are boring. So let's talk about the second leg of great lyric writing. Creating interest. So let's move on to lesson 5. Have an interesting story to tell. Have you ever finished your lyrics and thought, this should be exciting, but why do my lyrics feel so boring? This is what happens to most songwriters when they sit down with no plan. They write down whatever comes to mind, picking any phrase that rhymes. But when they read through their lyrics, something's missing. Every verse feels the same and you can't tell what they are trying to say. But the thing is, when even you don't even know what the song is about, how can you expect the listener to figure it out? Simple answer, they don't. But the reason this happens is simple. Your lyrics lack a story that evolves and stays interesting, because interest comes from change. And this can be a shift in perspective, a new detail or a consequence. So here's how you can create stories in your lyrics. Before you start writing, decide about the main idea of your song. Then think about how you can create a story from this. Find different perspectives or events that support your main idea. A structure that always works is stating your main idea in your chorus, and then give context in your verses and bridge. But don't get trapped in repeating the same statements but with different words. Once you understand this, you can see this in every hit song. But I know what you might be thinking right now. That's all well and good, but I barely managed to write one verse. How can I expect to come up with an interesting second one? But this is why the next lesson is so crucial. Lesson 6. Interesting second verses need change. I've always struggled with the second verse. After I finished the first one, my mind was already empty. I started pulling out my hair, finding remaining lines. Leftovers I can throw into the second verse. But the result was a patchwork of phrases. It was just the first verse, but worse. But let's be honest, that's not a great way to write lyrics, and a wasted opportunity to create connection with your listeners. But I could have avoided all this stress by asking myself, how can I introduce some change? Because without change the listener gets bored and the story stops moving. A second verse is not about more lines, it's about new information. But there's an easy trick you can fix this. Ask yourself 2 questions. First, what happened before and after this? And second, who did this affect as well? Ask yourself one of these questions right after you finish the first verse. Then write down whatever comes to mind. This is the interesting material you need to write a killer second verse. Now you have a reliable way to write an interesting second verse that actually moves the story forward. Now let's make sure your story stays interesting. With lesson 7, use contrast. Have you ever heard the saying, too much of a good thing will be bad for you? Eating some chocolate is great, but eating 3 bars in a row and you will puke. And the same goes for repetition in your songs. Because we need to be conscious about when repetition becomes boring. And this is where contrast comes into play. We need to find different ways to break out of consistent patterns. And there are 3 common mistakes I see all the time. First, using the same rhyme scheme for every song part. Second, every line has the same length. And third, talking from the same perspective in all song parts. This is a sure way to write boring lyrics. So look at your songs and ask yourself, what pattern do I repeat too often? And how can I mix it up? This is all you need to do to introduce some contrast and make your lyrics more interesting. So now you know how to use contrast to your advantage. But there's one trick I can't keep from you. A trick that will surprise your listeners. And that's lesson 8, twists in language. Have you ever listened to a song and after the first line you already know what's coming next? You already know every word and every rhyme. But this predictability kills lyrics. Because even the best ideas will become dull when they are too predictable. But this is where a little trick comes into play. We want to create little surprises in our lyrics. This means playing with the listener's expectations. We want to give them some familiar, but then introduce some twists. Just like a plot twist in a movie that makes you think, wait, what? The reason this works is simple. Surprise creates attention, and attention creates interest. And there are 3 common ways you can do this. First, you can take your song's story and take it into a whole new direction. So you can start out with a sad verse, but flip into a happy anthem in the chorus. Second, use common phrases and change them on purpose. And third, don't rhyme at all. This is especially powerful because the listener always expects rhymes. So when you don't rhyme the last line of a song part, you will create a small surprise. So for your next song, introduce one small twist in your verses. Now you have the power to write stories that stay interesting. But there's one common mistake you need to watch out for. A mistake that hurts your lyrics. And that's lesson 9, use the right point of view. In the past I made one frequent mistake. A mistake that made great songs miss their mark. The stories were emotional, the lines were solid, but the listener stayed unaffected. At the time I couldn't figure out what was wrong. But once I studied some hit songs, it all clicked. I didn't understand how the point of view changes the feel of lyrics. Because the point of view decides on how close the listener feels to your story. Writing in first person is intimate, like a confession. It pulls the listener in. They become part of the story. And on the other side, writing in third person is distant. But this is where most songwriters make the mistake. They turn intimate moments into news reports. But don't get me wrong, every point of view has its pros and cons. But you need to be conscious about which type you use. So here's a rule of thumb. Match the point of view to the song's emotion. If the song talks about a small intimate moment, write in first person. If the song tells a big cinematic story, use third person. Check out these songs if you want to see this in action. With 9 lessons behind us, we made our lyrics emotional and interesting. Now it's time to add the third leg of lyric writing and make our songs memorable. Because this is where we take great lyrics and make them hits. Hits that listeners can't forget or stop singing. So let's dive right in and talk about a mainstay of memorable lyrics. Lesson 10. Write better hooks. Most of you are well aware that a memorable song needs a hook, a short and catchy phrase that is easy to sing and gets remembered. But it's only half what a great hook is about. I used to come up with the simplest lyrics I could, but all I ended up with phrases that sounded cool but didn't fit my message at all. It felt like I dumped down my lyrics only to be easy to listen to. But then I figured out that I did this all wrong. What I forgot was that great hooks always need to convey the main message of the song. They can't just be easy to sing, because the chorus is the most important part of your song, and this is where every song part builds up to. So you can't waste this opportunity with meaningless words. So for your next song, try this. Look at this song's lyrics and summarize the main message in one simple sentence. Then turn this sentence into its simplest form, the shortest phrase that still captures the same meaning. This won't be easy, but this is what it takes to make your songs memorable for years to come. But writing a great hook isn't the only way you can make your lyrics more memorable, because you can screw up your hook but still end up with a memorable song if you do this. Lesson 11. Don't ignore repetition. I don't know about you, but when I first started out, I had a huge problem. Because whenever I wrote lyrics, they were always way too long. I wanted to pack as much information as possible, but only later I understood why I did this. First, it was my ego that wanted to prove, hey, I can write lyrics. And second, I haven't yet learned how to compress information. And all this hurt my songs in a big way, because there was no space left for repetition. Every line was something new, and they were so long I could barely sing them. This was a killer of memorability. Tell me, what would you rather have? Highly detailed lyrics that overwhelm the listener, or lyrics that capture the essence of your message and get stuck in your head? I'm pretty sure you want the second one. So we need to embrace repetition in your lyrics. There's a saying you should never forget. What gets repeated gets remembered. Because this saying exists for a reason. Repetition works because it gives the listener something to hold on to. Familiar places in your lyrics, places where they can breathe and process all the information. But repetition is not only needed in the choruses, but in all song parts. And you don't need to repeat whole sentences. Even small words can carry an entire song. So try one of these 3 things in your next song. Repeat short phrases across all song parts, start multiple lines with the same words, or use simple vocal phrases like O's on R's. Because that's how lyrics become memorable without getting shallow. A trick that these songs use to their advantage. So now you can make your song stick in the listener's mind. But the most memorable lyrics are no good when you can't convince anybody to give them a listen. So this is why the next lesson is so important. Lesson 12. Don't ignore power positions. When I started out, I only spent time working on the chorus. And I treated my verses as an afterthought. So I filled them with phrases and called it a day. But this hurt my songs, especially if they didn't start with a hook. Because the most memorable hook is no good when nobody gets to it. And this is why you need to understand power positions. Power positions are the first and last line of any song sections. These are the lines that determine if the listener keeps on listening. So we need to understand them to make the most of our songs. Power positions have 2 functions. The first line is your headline, the line that grabs attention and shouts, hey you need to listen to this. So it's important to make these first lines as attention grabbing as possible. So use interesting images or even provocative language to hook the listener. But then there are the last lines of your song sections, and they are like slingshots, because they shoot you into the next part so you can't stop listening. But to make this more practical, here's a rule of thumb. Treat your first lines like hooks and your last lines like cliffhangers. So make the first line specific and visual, but then use the last line as a build-up for the following section. So now you know where the most important lines live, but these power positions go hand in hand with the next lesson. A lesson I needed to learn the hard way. Lesson 13. Stories need to be visual. The first song I ever wrote never got listened to. I spent weeks writing the lyrics. I agonized about what they should say. I just wanted to make them special. Then I released it to absolute silence. I thought I crafted a strong emotional message. And that might be true. But what I ignored at the time was one simple rule. Show, don't tell. Sounds simple, right? Trust me, it's not. Because when you're starting out, your lyrics will sound like this. I'm so sad I can't do this anymore. Can I ever love you? I'm not sure. Can you tell me what's wrong with this? These lines are only statements. They are just facts. Facts nobody can relate to. Because they are filled with unclear language. But what you want is to create lyrics that capture the listener. And the best way you can do this is by making them visual. So they are forced to create a movie inside our heads. And this goes hand in hand with our first lessons. Sensory information and metaphors. But that's not enough. You need to create a scene. You need to take emotions and show the physical reality. So for your next song, do this. Find at least 2 statements per song part and replace them with a visual. So for example, if you write a sad song, show how you track yourself through the day, how you can't sleep, can't eat anymore, how your body and mind degrades over time. This is what it takes to make your songs memorable. But create visual stories will only get you so far, because I see so many songwriters fall into one specific trap. So next we need to talk about one of the most overlooked aspects of memorable lyrics. Lesson 14. Lyrics need to be easy to sing. Answer me this question. What's the best way to remember a song? It's by actually singing every word, repeating all the lines over and over again so they get stuck in your head. But here's what most overlook. Just because you can sing your lyrics doesn't mean the listener can. Think about it. We as songwriters spend a lot of time training our voices to control it and make it pleasant to listen to. But our listeners don't do that. So we lose sight on what is easy to sing and what's not. And you recognize this when your lyrics have too complicated and long words. And there are 2 reasons for this. First, we lack the ability to make our complicated stories simple, and second, we just want to show off. We want to show off that we are great musicians. But songs are not about impressing people. They are about sharing emotion. So make your songs as singable as possible. This means using lots of vowels and short words. But this doesn't mean that you need to dumb down your lyrics. So look at your chorus and ask yourself, can this be sung by a drunk guy that listens to your song for the first time? If you manage to clear this bar, then you wrote an anthem that gets sung in stadiums. Well, look at that. Our stew is almost complete. But I saved the most important part of lyric writing for last. Because this leg is the final piece that keeps your lyrics from falling over. This last leg is about focus. I can already hear you. Max, I'm already focused. Why is this a crucial part of lyric writing? Trust me, you're not. Because even if you follow the previous lessons, you will still struggle with this. Lesson 15, understand the heart of your song. Have you ever spent weeks on a song but never managed to finish it? You've written a bunch of cool lines, but still your lyrics feel like they're going nowhere. You don't know what to cut, you don't know how to wrap things up, and you run into writer's block every single day. This happened to me all the time, but that's only a symptom. The real problem comes down to a lack of focus. And to be more specific, it comes down to not understanding the heart of the song. But what do I mean with that? A song is like a living being, and like every living being, it needs a heart. Because without it, it doesn't have the energy to affect the listener. But let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be. The heart of the song comes down to two things: your core message and emotion. The core message is the main idea of your song, the reason you write it in the first place. And the core emotion is the feeling you want to capture. All the things we spent the first lessons talking about. But most songwriters never take the time to think about what these are. Or worse, they never finish their songs in the first place, because they lack a clear direction. But this is exactly where writer's block catches you. So to avoid this, follow this rule every song you write. Before you write even a single word, decide what your core message and emotion are. Write them down somewhere you can see them. This will be your guiding start and make sure you stay focused. Then be ruthless about it, because every line, every rhyme, every piece of music must support the heart of the song. If not, it will only weaken it. And I'm sure that's not what you want. But you might still fight writer's block all the time. But don't worry, the next lesson will get rid of that. Lesson 16. Specificity is your friend. It is not enough to decide what your main idea is, because you can even make mistakes here. Tell me if this ever happened to you. Someday an idea hits out of the blue, and you grab your instrument and start writing. Excited, you think this will be the greatest song you've ever written. But as you get to the lyrics, your ideas vanish. Sounds familiar? This happened to me countless of times. I always had an idea. For example, I wanted to write a song about my breakup, a deep, personal story with lots of interesting events. But my mind still froze once I tried to write lyrics, because it all comes down to one problem: not being specific enough. Think about it, how can I fit the whole story of my breakup into one song? How can I tell such a big story in just 3 minutes or less? You can't. And this is where you trap yourself in writer's block, because there are so many possible ways to write about this topic, you just get overwhelmed. But you can avoid this altogether with one small action. Take your idea and zoom in. Use only one small moment for your song, a small and specific moment in time. That's your true core message. So try this for your next song. Instead of writing a song about love, write about the exact moment you fell in love. Dive deep into this and pull us into your world. Describe what you felt that moment, how your legs can't stop shaking, how your crush made you nervous and laughed about your jokes. Do this and you never run into writer's block, because you will know exactly what you're going to write about. So now you're focused on one small moment. Focus on telling a captivating story. But let me show you a lesson I learned to make even highly personal stories interesting to others. Lesson 17. Have a casual conversation with your listeners. Every beginner faces this problem. They all write lines like this: in your arms, my restless hours learn to be still. I carry the light like fire cupped in my hands. If the world unthreads, my heart will hold its seam. I love you, the quiet road beneath all my plans. Sounds super cheesy, right? But that's not even the big problem here. The real problem is that such highly poetic lyrics kill connection. It's hard to relate or even understand. But you can avoid all of this by changing your approach. Just write as you were talking to a friend. Let's look at how songwriter Lizzie McAlpine does this. In her song What a Shame, she wrote this verse.
I don't wanna take my mind off you. Please take me home, kiss me slow, do anything you want to.
Her lyrics don't try to be poetic masterpieces. She writes like we are having a casual conversation. And this is where the real secret lies. When we listen to her, it feels like she's directly talking to us. And we have no choice but to get stuck in her world. This builds instant connection. So for your next song, Don't try to impress people with poetic phrases. Instead, imagine sitting down with a friend. How would you tell them what happened? Then write down what comes to mind. That's all you need to write lyrics that connect. So now you know how a small shift in focus can change the feel of a song. But we're not done yet. Let me show you a big thing hit songwriters also focus on. Lesson 18. Don't ignore prosody. The lyrics of hit songwriters don't stop at being specific or bidding in connection, but they even go a step further. They focus on a connection between their words and their music, because lyrics are only one part of a song. It doesn't matter if you write the most focused lyrics ever to exist, because all this focus will vanish if you don't do the same for your music. Think about it. How would you feel if you listened to lyrics about a heartbreak while an upbeat guitar riff shouts at your ears? The message wouldn't hit as hard, right? It would be much more powerful if the performance was intimate, if it's only you and the guitar. A stripped down performance that reflects the message and emotion of your song. But that's a huge mistake so many songwriters make. They don't focus on disconnection between words and music. But that's what prosody is all about. Because prosody forces you to be even more focused. It lets you stop and ask yourself, does the music I write even fit my core message and emotion? Oftentimes, it doesn't. So for your next song, think about this. Does the music support your lyrics? Once you manage to align these two things, you can jump into more advanced tricks. Tricks like reflecting the meaning of single phrases with sound design. But that's a lesson for another day. Well, look at that. We finally managed to build our stool. So with 18 lessons behind you, you are a different songwriter than you were before this video. Now you know how crucial emotion, interest, memorability and focus are for your lyrics. But your journey doesn't stop here. Because if you'd liked at least one of these lessons, you will love this free lyric checklist. Use it to make your lyrics the most powerful form they can be. While you write your next song, you can dive deeper into all these lessons and level up your skills. Watch the video explanations, read the song examples, or use the action points for your next song. So download it for free, the link is in the description. If you're still watching right now and you want a system to get you from blank pages to daily finished lyrics, then watch this video.